Hello PMP aspirants, are you tired of the practice question videos that you see online that just give you the answer without explaining the actual underlying project management concept in detail? So, welcome to PMC Lounge where we do things differently. So, while other channels keep churning out practice question videos one after the other without caring too much about the actual quality of the questions or even explaining the underlying project management concept, we believe in a different approach. In this video, we are going over 60 real PMP exam questions, as real as they can be. And for every single one of these questions, we will go over the relevant project management concept as well. And not just that, our PMC Lounge YouTube channel has a vast library of PMP concept videos covering every single topic that you need to learn to pass your PMP exam. So, to help you dive deeper, we have linked the relevant video for each of these 60 questions in the description below. So, you go over a question, the relevant concept video for that question will be linked in the description below. So 60 links are there in the description below. Definitely check them out. Now let's dive in and answer these 60 questions and get you a step closer to your PMP certification. Question number 1. The total number of story points delivered in a sprint is known as sprint increment, sprint iteration, sprint retrospective, or sprint velocity. Now, first of all, there's nothing that is called sprint increment, by the way. And this question is a direct definition of sprint velocity because the total number of story points delivered in a sprint is known as sprint velocity. Sprint retrospective is a legit word, but this is more of a meeting. Retrospective is basically a meeting where you reflect and improve after the sprint is already over. Now, velocity is something which is also used by looking into the past sprint performance to plan for your future sprints. So, a scrum master might look at what has been the sprint velocity for a certain team for, let's say, the last 4 sprints. And based on that, he or she is going to plan how many story points that the team can deliver as part of the next sprint. All right, let's move on. Question number 2. Which of the following is best tool for root cause analysis? Ishikawa diagram, fishbone diagram, herringbone diagram, or all of the above? The answer might be a bit surprising if you're not already aware, but all of the above is the correct answer because these three are different names for the same concept. And as I promised earlier, you will find conceptual videos linked in the description below. So if you want to know, as part of this question, now you already know that these three are basically different names for the same concept. The fishbone diagram itself can be known as Ishikawa diagram or the herringbone diagram. So you already know this as part of this question. But now if you want to know more about what exactly is a fishbone diagram, how it is used as a tool for root cause analysis, then definitely check out the video linked in the description below, which is going to explain in detail what a fishbone diagram really is. And similarly, you will find 60 such links in the description below. Let's move on. Let's talk about question number 3. You are the project manager of a construction project. You are inviting requests for proposal from eligible vendors. While going over the list of vendors, you realize that one of the names in the list is a good friend of yours. You are the project manager here. You know he is excellent at what he does and will be the perfect match for your project. But what should you do next? A. Disassociate from the bidding process and inform your sponsor. Award him the contract since you know he is a perfect match for your project, anyways. C. Give him some inputs off the record on how your organization awards contracts. So give him some more information. Do not contact your friend and continue with the procurement process. What do you think? Now, this question is obviously related to procurement, but as much it is related to procurement, it is also related to ethics. And any conflict of interest must be disclosed and handled transparently. That's what PMP tries to teach you. So, how do you disclose and basically handle this transparently? The correct answer is option A: disassociate from the bidding process and inform your sponsor that one of the eligible vendors is your friend. So, you have to basically not be associated, not be a part of the bidding process, right? So whenever you see conflict of interest, you should always disclose it. And this is a tip for any ethics related question that you are going to see on your PMP exam. For any conflict of interest, definitely disclose this. You should also recuse or disassociate yourself as and when needed, and always maintain transparency throughout the entire process. So these are some tips for your PMP exam. Now, as you can see, B, C, D, all of these are basically violations. All of these are not ethical. Uh, you might see, option D does not really look unethical, but this is also unethical because it has an appearance of bias, because that's something that already exists. You already have a bias. You already know that he is excellent at what he does and he will be the perfect match for your project. So as a project manager, you already have bias. So that is why all three are incorrect options. Let's move on to question number 4. The CPI of 0.73 means. CPI is cost performance index. What does this mean? The project would cost 73% more than originally planned. The project would cost 27% more than originally planned. The project would cost 73% less than originally planned, or the project is only getting $0.73 out of every single dollar spent. So CPI, known as the cost performance index. The formula for CPI is EV, and I'm really bad at writing, so excuse me there, especially writing using a mouse. So EV by AC, this is the formula for CPI, earned value divided by actual cost. And when you do so, if you think about it, what this means is wherever your CPI is greater than 1, that means the cost efficiency is good because you're dividing earned value by actual cost. So wherever the answer is greater than 1, it means the cost efficiency is good. You are getting more value than what you are spending. Now, wherever CPI is equals to 1, that means you're on target, right? You're getting whatever value as compared to whatever that you're spending, right? So you're getting equal value to what you're spending. When CPI is less than 1, what that means is your cost efficiency is poor, which means you are getting less value than what you are spending. So here CPI is 0.73, which means you are getting less value, which means option D is actually correct. You are only getting $0.73 worth of value for every $1 spent. Now, EVM, or earned value management, is a very important concept to know for your PMP exam. Definitely check out the link in the description below next to question 4, which will help you understand every single concept that you need to know as far as earned value management is concerned. All of these are free YouTube videos available on our channel. So definitely like this video if you're getting value so far, if you like our work, and consider subscribing for more. All right, let's go over question number 5. Your project team typically goes for an evening snack at 4 p.m. Due to budget constraints, you are no longer able to provide free snacks, and the team is not happy about it. Which motivation theory is at play here? Okay, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Vroom's expectancy theory, McClelland's human motivation theory, or Herzberg's motivation hygiene theory. The correct answer is Herzberg's motivation hygiene theory. There are some hygiene factors like your salary, working conditions, perks like snacks, right? Evening snack that we are talking about. These are hygiene factors. They do not motivate employees, but their removal can cause dissatisfaction, which is what happened here, right? So having snacks was okay. It was a hygiene factor. Nobody was motivated enough because snacks were available. But removing these hygiene factors, removing the snacks, can cause dissatisfaction, which is what it did. So then there are motivators, recognition, achievement, growth. These are actual motivators that drive real motivation. But we are talking about motivation hygiene theory, which states that there are motivators, there are hygiene factors, and when you remove the snacks, it was a hygiene factor which was removed. Okay, let's move on to question number 6. You have awarded the contract to a seller. Okay. However, it was only later that you realized that you have missed a clause for any project delay. Now you would want to modify the contract. What is the right way to proceed? Interesting question, right? So you've already awarded the contract to a seller and now you want to modify the contract. Is that even possible? Let me know in the comments. I mean, before we proceed to answer this question and look at the options, let me know in the comments below, what do you think? Once the contract is awarded, can you actually change it? Let me know in the comments. Pause and go there. Once you come back, let's look at the options. Contract is legally binding, so it cannot be modified once awarded. B, make use of the contract change control system. C, inform the seller about this change through a formal written communication. Or D, casually bring up the change with the seller after a meeting and observe what his reaction really is. Now, if you have already answered in the comments below whether a contract can be changed after it is awarded, let me tell you that changes can still be made after a contract is awarded. But these changes must go through what is known as a contract change control system. This is a formal process for modifying contracts. All right. So that means option A is wrong right out of the gate because it says it cannot be modified, which is wrong. It can be modified. Now, option C, it talks about inform the seller about this change through a formal written communication. Now, this is good, but it should be routed via this channel, via the contract change control system, and not via any formal communication itself. This option, I mean, it's totally wrong. Casually bringing things up, this is completely against the professionalism that is required when you handle contracts. So obviously the correct answer is option B, which means make use of the contract change control system. All procurement changes go through this change control system. Even if you are changing, even if you observe a spelling mistake and you want to make that change, it must go through the contract change control system. And this is after you have awarded the contract. Now, one more thing here. Once you have awarded the contract and you want to make any changes, these changes cannot be done by just single party. Every single party involved in the contract or has something to do with the contract must be contacted, must approve of the change before you can make any changes. All right, let's move on. Question number 7. If EV is equals to 550, AC is 650, and PV is 600, what would be the CV? So EV is earned value, AC is actual cost, PV is planned value, and CV is cost variance. So we have to find out what CV is. And to find this out, all you need to know is the formula for CV, which is EV minus AC. That's it. So you have to subtract EV, which is 550, by AC, which is 650. So what would be the answer? 50 minus 50, 100, or minus 100? The answer is minus 100 because that's the formula for CV, which is cost variance. Okay, let's move on. Question number 8. You are purchasing insurance for your project equipment considering how this is a long-term project. What type of risk response is this? Acceptance, mitigation, transfer, avoidance. So what are you doing here? You are purchasing insurance. Whenever you purchase insurance, it shifts the financial impact of that risk to a third party or to an insurance company. So what you are actually doing here is transferring the risk from the project to this insurance company. Now, remember, transferring the risk does not eliminate the risk. It just shifts the responsibility for impact. Acceptance is basically acknowledging that a risk exists and you don't take any action for it. Mitigation is when you try to reduce the probability of that risk materializing, or you try to reduce the impact of that risk if it materializes. And then you have avoidance, which is you eliminate the risk entirely by changing the plan, changing your course itself. So every time you see insurance, warranties, or even contracts where you involve some third party, what you are doing is transferring the risk. So transfer is the correct answer. Which one of the following is least important stakeholder? So we are looking at least important stakeholder here. Project team members working on the project definitely does not sound like the least important stakeholder. Competitor whose organization will be affected by the new product release. Okay. Project manager. Okay. Is the project manager the least important stakeholder? I hope the answer is no. D, customer who will be using the end product or service. Now, who is a stakeholder, by the way? Now, when you learn more about stakeholders, you'll realize that anyone who is impacted or anyone who perceives that they will be impacted by the outcome of your project, even if it's positively or negatively, they are a stakeholder in your project. Now, if you think through with that definition, all of these people are actually impacted or they can be perceived to be impacted by your project, which means all of them are actually stakeholders. But the question is asking which one is least important stakeholder. So when you are working on a project, I think option B is the correct option here because you don't necessarily care what the competitor is going to do because they are the least important stakeholder. You don't necessarily care even if they are affected by your new product release. In fact, you would want them to be affected so that you can do better than them. So a competitor is technically affected, but they do not have any direct involvement or influence in your project decisions. This makes them the least important stakeholder from your perspective, from the project manager's perspective, or from the project perspective itself. When we talk about project team, which was one of the options here, when we talk about the project manager, these are the core stakeholders. Even your customer, I would argue, is a core stakeholder. They have direct roles, they have high power, they have high interest in the project. So definitely look into a concept called power interest grid. This is something that we have covered in the past as well. It helps in analyzing the stakeholders. Okay, question number 10. After a significant amount of time and effort dedicated to the creation of the work breakdown structure, it is finally ready. So your WBS is ready. Now you have distributed the WBS to all the relevant stakeholders. You receive an email from John complaining that the WBS isn't detailed enough. For detailed descriptions of each WBS element, where should John look? So John just looked at the WBS and John seems to think that WBS is not detailed enough. So should he look into the scope statement, WBS dictionary, stakeholder register, or the project charter? Well, the correct answer here is WBS dictionary, because the aim of the WBS dictionary is to provide detailed description of each WBS element. So whether it be the deliverables, whether it be the acceptance criteria, whether it be who is responsible for what, whether it be cost estimates, schedule estimates, all of that is available in the WBS dictionary. So for detailed understanding of everything that you see in the WBS, always refer to the WBS dictionary. What is scope statement? It defines the overall scope, but it is definitely not a detailed breakdown of each element. Stakeholder register, it is just a list of all the stakeholders. A project charter is a very high level document that is created much earlier than the WBS for sure. So WBS, think of this as the structure. This is a work breakdown structure. This is just the structure, but the dictionary is where the details are. Okay, with that, I would like to remind you about our PM 101 training session. This is your gateway to the world of project management, a 1.5 hours training video, absolutely free. It will be linked in the description below. This is one of the highest viewed project management basics training video out there on YouTube with over 500,000 views. Definitely check this video out if you're getting started into the world of project management. Okay, let's move on to question number 11. ESVP means, what exactly is ESVP here? ESVP, is it engineer, student, and vice principal? Is it engineer, system tester, validator, project manager, explorer, shopper, vacationer, practitioner, or is it prisoner that stands for P? So this is a straight up definition sort of question. It's a straightforward question. You don't have to do much thinking. If you have ever heard about ESVP, you already know that option D is the correct option. And this is used when you are doing your retrospective meeting. So agile teams are transparent, and agile teams like to do this as part of their icebreaker while you do a retrospective meeting, right? So a scrum master might ask all the agile team members to select how do they identify themselves as part of this retrospective meeting itself. So someone might say, I identify myself as an explorer in this meeting because I feel I'm eager to learn and I'm eager to discover. Someone might say, I identify as a shopper because I'm looking for a few good ideas out of this retrospective meeting. Someone might say, I'm a vacationer. I'm just happy to be away from normal work and sit in this meeting. Someone might say, well, I feel like a prisoner here because I am forced to attend this retrospective meeting. So obviously, this is what ESVP is. This is what the teams use at the start of the retrospective meeting to set the tone. And a scrum master can use this, or an agile project manager, whoever is running this retrospective meeting, can use this to set the tone of the meeting and adjust facilitation accordingly. If everyone in the retrospective meeting thinks that they are prisoner, then it's up to the agile project manager or the scrum master to make sure that they don't feel like they are stuck in a meeting, that they are forced to attend this without any interest, right? Okay, question number 12. Which of the following is an example of cost of conformance? Cost of conformance: warranty cost, scrap, quality training, or cost of a rework. Now, cost of conformance is basically a proactive cost. This is money that is spent to prevent defects and ensure quality. For example, any training, any preventive maintenance, any process audits, any quality planning, all of this is cost of conformance. So, what do you think is cost of conformance here? The correct answer is quality training, right? So, as I mentioned, this is a proactive cost, and you do quality training to ensure, as a proactive measure, to ensure that quality is not subpar, quality is as high as it can be. Now, similarly, just like cost of conformance, there's a concept called cost of non-conformance. So while cost of conformance is a proactive cost, cost of non-conformance is a reactive cost. It is the money that is spent after defects actually occur. So warranty cost is a cost of non-conformance. Scrap is a cost of non-conformance. Rework is a cost of non-conformance. Wherever you see conformance, that means prevention and appraisal costs. Wherever you see non-conformance, that is internal and external failure costs. Now, these two concepts, cost of conformance and cost of non-conformance, are part of the cost of quality. In fact, these two make up the cost of quality, COQ, which will be linked below if you want to check and know more about the cost of quality. All right, let's move on to question number 13. The customer is looking for the project to be complete 10 days earlier than planned due to a marketing constraint. You work with your project team and figure out that this can be achieved if a couple of activities can overlap. This approach is known as fast tracking, crashing, resource leveling, or concurrent engineering. So, what are you trying to do? You want to finish the project 10 days earlier. That's what the customer is asking for. And you think, as a project manager, that this can be achieved if a couple of activities can overlap. That means a couple of activities need to run concurrently. So, is concurrent engineering correct? Well, that is not correct, because we will actually go over all of this. So, what is fast tracking? Fast tracking basically means overlapping activities that were originally planned in sequence. And this is typically done to shorten the schedule. And that means precisely what we are trying to do here. So, fast tracking is the correct answer. Crashing means you add extra resources, or you add costs to shorten the duration of the project. Resource leveling is adjusting your schedule to resolve resource conflicts. This can actually extend duration. And concurrent engineering is overlapping design and development phases. It is similar to fast tracking, but it has more to do with product development environment, right? So the correct answer here, the most appropriate answer here, is fast tracking. Okay, let's move on. Question number 14. When does a sprint get over? When the team finishes the work, the sprint gets over. When the sprint retrospective is completed, the sprint gets over. When the sprint review is completed, or when the time box expires. When does a sprint get over? The correct answer is when the time box expires. This means even if your retrospective is not complete and the time box expired, your sprint will be over. Now, I said over, not complete, because it is possible that you were not able to achieve everything that you set out to do. But whenever the time box expires, your sprint gets over, because because sprint is a time boxed event. It can be 1 week long, 2 week long, even 4 weeks long. But whenever that time box expires, your sprint is over. Sprint always ends on the planned end date. Work rolls over to the next sprint if it is incomplete. So remember what I just said. Sprint always ends on the planned end date. If work is not complete, it gets rolled over to the next sprint. Okay, question number 15. You are the project manager on a team that follows separate phases for each project, starting with a requirements phase followed by design. Some coding work can begin before design and requirements are finalized, but overall, no part of coding is considered completed unless requirements and design phases are completed first. Which term best defines your project? Scrum, rolling wave planning, waterfall, or iterative? The correct answer here is waterfall, and the reason for that is hidden in this single line. No part of coding is considered completed unless requirements and design phases are completed first. So, although there can be some overlap, but previous phases must be complete before you can call one of your phases, which was the earlier phase, as complete. So this means you are following a sequence. The most sequential way to deliver project is to do it via the waterfall model, right? Scrum is basically agile. It is iterative. It is definitely not sequential. Rolling wave planning is all about progressive elaboration of details. It is not a phase order. And then you have iterative, which involves repeated cycles of development and refinement as we go over. Okay, let's move on to question number 16. You are the project manager on a construction project. You have worked with your team to define dependencies and estimated their durations and resource requirements. Now you are creating the project schedule. Which of the following tools and techniques is of no use at this time? So when you're doing the project schedule, what is of no use? Resource leveling, schedule compression, critical chain method, or a reserve analysis? What do you think? The correct answer here is reserve analysis. This is of no use. So resource leveling is all about balancing resources across the tasks. Schedule compression is what we talked about previously, right? Fast tracking, crashing the schedule, that is used to compress schedule. Critical chain method is all about adjusting schedule for any kind of resource constraints that you may have. Reserve analysis, this is primarily used for risk management and to determine contingency buffers. So this is not for building the schedule of the project. That is why reserve analysis is the correct answer. This is not a tool or technique to be used during your scheduling, right? When you're planning the schedule. Okay, let's move on. Question number 17. Your project involves vendors. One of the vendor is requesting confidential information about your project, without which they won't be able to make progress. The vendor would like to know who has the authority to release that confidential information. Which project document should he refer to? Should the vendor refer to here? So, confidential information is in question here. A. Project charter. B. Scope management plan. C. Communications management plan. Or D. Stakeholder management plan. The correct answer here is the communications management plan, because this plan contains what information is shared, who is authorized to share it, how and when it is communicated, right? Everything will be available in the communications management plan. Okay, question number 18. As a project manager on a software development project, what would you give the highest priority? Quality, cost, schedule, or scope? Cost, schedule, and scope, as they are the triple constraints. Quality is the most important aspect of project management, others can come later. It's all about the money, honey. So, cost is the key. Or D, it would depend on the prevailing circumstances of the project. What do you think is the most important between quality, cost, schedule, or scope? The correct answer is D, because it will definitely depend on the prevailing circumstances of the project. There is no defined or one answer to this question, fortunately or unfortunately, because cost, quality, schedule, scope, they are all equally important, but this can vary based on what the objectives of the project are. What is the stakeholder needs and requirements? It can also vary based on constraints. Sometimes schedule is critical. Example, there's a product launch coming up, so schedule is the most critical piece here. Sometimes cost is important because you have a very limited budget on your project. Sometimes scope or quality can be important because, let's say, quality is important because you are working on some safety critical software. So the project manager's role is to balance the triple constraint. You should also balance quality based on specific priorities of the project and what the prevailing circumstances of the project are. So there is no universal most important when it comes to quality, cost, schedule, scope. Everything is context driven. Okay, question number 19. With the help of Scrum planning tools, the Scrum teams take project decisions at the last responsible moment, collectively, just in time, as soon as possible. With the help of Scrum planning tools, the Scrum teams take project decisions at the last responsible moment, collectively, just in time, or as soon as possible. There is a concept called at the last responsible moment in Agile, and that is the correct answer here. I would urge you to check out the video next to question 19 in the description below, because that will take you to this detailed explanation of what at the last responsible moment really means. The Agile or Scrum teams use this at the last responsible moment so that there is flexibility as long as possible, so that decisions are made when maximum information is available. And that is why they use this concept of last responsible moment. Collectively is also true about Scrum teams, but not the keyword that is tested here. Just in time also applies to planning work, but it is not necessarily used in decision making. We are talking about project decisions here. uh, as soon as possible, this is the opposite of at the last responsible moment, right? And as soon as possible can lead to premature decisions because you might not have full data or full context or full information. So, right decisions at the right time, at the last responsible moment, is what Agile aims for. Question number 20. As a project manager, while doing the assessment of the team members, you have realized that two of them are not knowledgeable enough to make or to handle the tasks assigned. So you know that two of the your project members are not knowledgeable enough. What will you do? You will warn the functional manager and ask for other resources. Ask for both of them to provide daily progress reports by EOD. Communicate the need for improvement and establish a performance review schedule, or get extra budget and hire additional resources. Now, this seems to be a very tricky situation, right? You are the project manager here. You are supposed to lead. You are supposed to be the leader of the project. You know that there are two team members that are not knowledgeable enough. How do you handle this situation? The correct answer is option C. You communicate the need for improvement and you establish a performance review schedule. Now remember, as a project manager, your first approach should be to coach, mentor, and manage performance of your team members. You should never replace team members, at least never immediately, right? Option A, you are escalating to the functional manager. It can actually come later if performance does not improve, but you should first, as I mentioned, your focus should be on coaching, mentoring, and performance management. Option B, daily reports. This tracks progress, but it doesn't address the skill gap that exists here, right? So it does not do anything about your team members not being knowledgeable enough. When it comes to option D, which is hiring new resources, this is the last resort, I would say, because it has cost considerations. It may even have schedule consideration. As a project manager, your role is to develop the team. Remember the Tuckman model, right? You have to train, you have to coach before considering any kind of a replacement or escalations. Okay, let's move on to question number 21. The project manager of a complex IT project is having a one on one discussion with a new engineer. The PM explains one of the algorithms that is being developed and asks the engineer if he would be able to document the functioning of the algorithm and send it to the stakeholders. The engineer agrees and shares the document. However, after going over the document, the PM realizes that the engineer didn't really understand the algorithm itself. Now, who is at fault for the loss of time and effort here? Interesting question. Who do you think is responsible? Perhaps the engineer, because the engineer was not able to do his or her job and they didn't understand the algorithm. Let's see. Functional manager. He shouldn't have assigned a new engineer on this complex project. Project manager. He should have helped create and review the document with the engineer himself or herself, as he should have immediately asked his doubts on the understanding of the algorithm. The project manager, it is his responsibility that the message is clearly understood and get a confirmation from the engineer. What do you think? So, in two options, you see that the project manager is at fault here, but for different reasons. And this is the nuance that I want you to understand. Should the project manager have helped create and review the document? Is that the project manager's job? Or should the project manager, it is his responsibility that the message is clearly understood? And the project manager should also get a confirmation from the engineer. I think option D sounds much better, and that is the correct option here. The sender, who is the project manager, is responsible for ensuring that the message is received and understood correctly. So, even by simply asking, do you understand, might not be enough, especially when the engineer is actually new. There should be a confirmation of understanding through feedback, examples, or even demonstrations. That is what's required. Functional manager is not really responsible here for this misunderstanding between the project manager and the engineer. The engineer, although the engineer does have responsibility, but when we talk about in terms of PMP certification, right, the sender carries the ultimate accountability for clarity. And here's a PMP takeaway for you: the project manager must always ensure understanding when it comes to communications. And feedback loops, they are very, very crucial. So the answer here is option D. It is the project manager's responsibility. All right, let's move on to question number 22. Which of the following is not a project stakeholder? People whose jobs are at stake due to the outcome of the project, people whose jobs are safe but they still believe that they will be impacted, your direct competitor, or none of the above. So anyone who may impact or be impacted by the project either positively or negatively, is a stakeholder. That's the clear stakeholder definition. So if we check for each of these options, people whose jobs are at stake because of the outcome of the project, right? They have direct high interest in this project's outcome. People whose jobs are safe, but they believe that they will be impacted. So perception also matters here, right? So belief of impact. Remember when we went over the definition, we said that anyone who may be impacted or even believes that they will be impacted, they are all stakeholders. Your direct competitors are definitely a stakeholder, right? They are considered external stakeholders because project outcomes can influence the market dynamics. So all of these are actually project stakeholders. The correct answer is option D, which says none of the above. All of them are stakeholders of your project, and whenever you are working on the project, keep this in mind. Okay, question number 23. The latest change request you received does not impact the project cost. As a project manager, what should be your next step? Read this question again. The change request or the CR that you received does not impact the project cost. So this is good news, right? Your cost does not increase or decrease at all as part of this change request. So what should you as a project manager be doing now? Speak to your manager about the change request. Send the change request to the change control board, also known as the CCB. Evaluate the impact on other project constraints. Or D, go ahead and make the change. It is anyways a $0 change request. There is no cost involved. The correct answer here, though, is option C, evaluate the impact on other project constraints. So, although this change request has no impact on the cost, but that does not mean that it has no impact on the scope of the project, on the schedule of the project, on the quality, on the overall risk that the project has, or even the resources on your project, right? As a project manager, your first step every time you see a change request is to know the complete impact that this change request is going to have on your project, on all the constraints. Only after that should you be sending the change request to the CCB or the change control board. Once the CCB approves, you can then go ahead and make that change. Involving your manager should only be done if there is a situation that needs to be escalated to the higher management. Other than that, it is unnecessary to involve your manager when it comes to change requests. Okay, let's move on. Question number 24. Which of the following is not part of an agile team's mindset towards working software? Working software delivers final version of the features quickly. Working software delivery is an effective way of getting feedback. Working software is the primary measure of progress, and working software is delivered frequently. Now, agile teams do not focus on delivering the final version quickly. That's not what agile teams do. So, this option is a wrong right off the gate. What agile teams actually do is they deliver incremental working versions frequently so that they can gather feedback and then they can improve. All the other options B, C, and D, they align directly with the agile manifesto principles, which will be linked below. So option A is definitely not a part, right? Remember, not a part of the agile team's mindset. Okay, question number 25. As a project manager, what is the first action you would take as soon as you realize that an unidentified risk has materialized? So, the risk has already materialized and it was an unidentified risk. That means you were never able to identify it. Rework on the risk register to better uncover other such unknown risks, create a workaround, inform the senior management about this, or inform the customer about possible consequences. The correct thing to do here, since the unidentified risk has already materialized, the correct next thing to do here is to create a workaround. And this is an unidentified risk, right? It becomes an issue. It is no longer a risk because it has already materialized and it was not even on the risk register because it is unidentified. So always the first action that you need to do is to create a workaround so that you can address the issue and you can minimize its impact. At least try to do so. Updating the risk register can happen later. Informing the senior management or the customer, it can be part of the communication, but the first thing that you should do is to mitigate, right? Once the mitigation is in place, that's when you can do the communication as well. So whenever you see an unknown risk materializing, you should always do the workaround. You should then maybe update the register and lessons learned, and then perhaps as required to your communication. Unidentified risk materializing could also mean production impact, right? Think about a flight booking system that has collapsed. So if a flight booking system has collapsed and is not working, what would you do? You would always create a workaround rather than updating documents like risk register or informing the senior management or customer. You can always do so, but the first thing, your first step should be to create a workaround, should be to mitigate or minimize the impact of this issue. Okay, question number 26. Project manager, along with stakeholders, has determined the high level schedule constraints. Which process group is the project in? So, what has the project manager, along with the stakeholders, done here? They have determined what are the high level schedule constraints. Is this done in the closing process group? Is this done in stakeholder management process group? Is that even a process group? Is this done in planning or is this done in initiating? The correct answer is initiating because we are looking at high level schedule constraints. In the initiating process group, the project manager and the stakeholders, they define what the high level scope of the project is going to be, what the high level schedule is going to be, what could be the high level schedule constraints, what could be the high level budget constraints, and all of this is done to create the project charter. The planning, right, this option C, this comes later once initiation is already done, and this is where a detailed schedule development can happen. Stakeholder management is not a process group, and then closing is what you do at the end of the project. So whenever you see high level constraints, high level scope, high level budget, high level schedule, you are talking about the initiating process group because all this high level information goes into your project charter. Okay, question number 27. You have used a risk analysis tool that models your project risks by running simulations that calculate random outcomes and probabilities. What is this tool called? So, this is basically the definition of a tool. And now the question is asking you, what exactly is this tool called? So, if you already know the answer, you don't even need the options because this is what Monte Carlo tool does. So EMV analysis, Monte Carlo analysis, Delphi technique, brainstorming. The correct answer is Monte Carlo analysis, which is all that this tool does. It gives you random outcomes and probabilities by running simulations. So straightforward question, EMV analysis is basically your expected value for risks. It is often used inside the decision tree. It is not a simulation for sure. Delphi technique, this is basically an expert consensus method. It is not a simulation again. And idea generation is what brainstorming is all about. Okay, question number 28. Your colleague project manager is out on an emergency and might not be back to work for a long term. You are now handed over the project and you realize that there are 85 employees and 15 contractors working on the project. Where will you look to find out who's doing what? So, who exactly is doing what on your project? Which document or which tool? What should you do? What should you check to find this? Pareto chart, resource histogram, RACI chart, project organization chart. If you know even a little bit about the RACI chart, you will know that this is the correct answer. RACI stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. It clearly shows who is responsible for each task, who is accountable, who needs consultation, who is just informed about any of the project tasks, right? So it is specifically used to clarify roles and responsibilities, and this is exactly what you are looking for in this situation that is given in the question, right? Pareto chart is basically used for prioritization. It is not used for role mapping. Resource histogram shows the usage of resources over time or what their workload is. It does not tell you who is doing what. And then project organization chart, this is something that is going to show you hierarchy. It is not going to show you task level responsibilities. So every time you want to see who is doing what, you should check the RACI chart. Okay, question number 29. While working as the project manager of a highway construction project, you are visited by the project sponsor. The sponsor asks you to lay 12-inch thick asphalt and not the 9-inch, which has been mentioned in the scope statement and WBS. What should be your next step? Ask the team to accommodate the request as soon as possible. Look for cheaper suppliers so that the cost impact can be minimized. Set up an emergency team meeting. Refuse the request and ask the sponsor to use the change management system. A lot of project managers on real life projects would actually do this, but this is not the right answer. The right answer is to refuse the request and ask the sponsor to use the change management system. This is a very big change from 12-inch thick asphalt to from 9-inch thick asphalt to 12-inch, and this is a significantly big change. It must follow the formal change control process. This is a big change and it should follow the control process. Even if there are smaller changes, even they should follow the formal change control process. So even though this is something that is coming from the sponsor directly, who is one of the most important stakeholder, if not the most important stakeholder, the project manager cannot simply implement scope changes without proper approval. And all these options, they are bypassing the important approvals that are required. They are bypassing the process. So always route your changes through the change control system or the change management system. Never implement changes without due diligence. Okay, question number 30. You are the project manager of a flyover construction project. While planning, you realized that you would need approval from Indian Railways for construction on a certain part of land owned by the railways. These kind of dependencies that originate outside the project are known as. So you now have a dependency on a totally different organization. This is a mandatory dependency, internal dependency, discretionary dependency, or external dependency. The correct answer is external dependency, because external dependencies are constraints or approvals that rely on parties outside the project team or outside the organization that is doing the project. So it could be any government regulatory authority or body like the Indian Railways that is given in the question here. It could be even third party vendors, right? Mandatory dependency is hard logic. It means, this is something that has to be done. It could be, foundation before walls. Internal dependencies are dependencies that are within the project or the organization itself. Discretionary dependencies are preferred. They can be, best practice sequence that are chosen by the team. But external dependency is outside the control of the project manager. permits, approvals, third party timelines, right? All of these are outside the purview of the control of the project manager on the project, right? So this is why this is an external dependency. With that, I would like to remind you about our playlists section. Playlists is where the gold is. All the conceptual videos that you need to understand or learn for your PMP exam are available in this playlist section. So the best part is that all of this is absolutely free, so do not miss this out. Okay, let's move on to question number 31. You are managing a project with 25 team members and one team lead at three different locations each. You also have three members supporting as part time project staff. How many communication channels are possible in your project? Now, this is a very simple question as long as you know how to calculate communication channels. The formula for calculating communication channels is n into n minus 1 divided by 2, and n here means the total number of project team members. Excuse my handwriting here, but n into n minus 1 is what we are looking at, not a. So, okay, so what is the n here? That's the tricky part now, because you have 25 team members, then you have three members that are supporting as part-time project staff. They should also be counted as part of the team members, the project team members itself. So you have 28. Then you have one team lead, but at three different locations each. That means you have three team leads. So this means you have 31 project team members. Now that's the catch here, because it says you are managing a project. So you are the project manager and you should be counting yourselves too. So the total number of project team members is 32. So if you do 32 multiplied by 31 divided by 2, you get 496, which is option A, and that is the correct answer, 496. So all that you need to know to solve this question is the formula for communication channels, and also make sure that you are looking into catches like these, right? There was a catch here. It didn't say you are the project manager. You should be counting yourself too. So the correct answer is 496. By the way, I've mentioned this earlier. I'd like to repeat it here. If you want to know more about communication channels, if you want to maybe practice more communication channels related questions, look out at the link corresponding to question 31 in the description below. And this is important because the next question is about EVM. And if you want to know more about EVM, head over to the link next to question 32 in the description below. All the videos that you see in the links below in the description, all of them are absolutely free. And that is why PMC Lounge is different from any other practice questions videos that you see online. Okay, so SPI of 0.67 means, SPI stands for Schedule Performance Index. The formula for this is EV divided by PV. That means earned value divided by planned value. Now, what does an SPI, which is a Schedule Performance Index, it is an index, right? What does this mean? So when you divide earned value by planned value and you get 0.67, that is not a good value to get, right? Because if you do the math and if you're dividing EV by PV, which is SPI, if the answer is less than 1, that means you are behind schedule. Your earned value is less than planned value. If it is equals to 1, that means you are on target. If it is more than 1, nothing like it, you are ahead of schedule. So that's what this means. Now, you are ahead of schedule by 33%. Absolutely not. We are actually behind schedule. You are behind schedule by 67%. Not really. You are progressing at only 67% of the rate originally planned. This is the correct answer. And you are progressing at only 33%. That is not correct. So the correct answer is you are progressing at only 67% of the rate originally planned. This means you are achieving 67% of the planned work per unit of time. And obviously this means that you are behind schedule. Now, option B is incorrect here, because it is not a percentage behind, it is a performance rate. So we talk about 67% of the rate originally planned. Okay, and then again the tip here is for SPI, if you are less than 1, then you are behind schedule. If you are equal to 1, you are on schedule. Your earned value is equals to planned value. That's how you get an answer of 1 when you divide the two. But if your SPI is greater than 1, you are ahead of schedule. Again, a reminder about the concept videos in the description corresponding to each question. You can definitely learn more about earned value management by checking out the EVM playlist. Okay, question number 33. Which of the following is the most common way to write user stories? As a role, I want to action so that some benefit, right? As a resource, I want to goal so that benefit. As a persona, I want to achievement so that benefit. As a scrum master, I want to project phase so that velocity. Now, this is again is a straightforward question. The standard format for user stories in Agile is option A, which means as a role, I want to action so that whatever benefit that you're going to achieve. B and C are variations, but these are not commonly used. These are not common standards. D is totally incorrect because user stories are about end user value. It is not about project phases or velocity at all. So this format ensures clear role, clear action, and clear business value in every story. And that is why it is used as a standard format. Okay, question number 34. Your organization is a projectized organization. Who does the project team reports to? Functional manager, project manager, both A and B, none of the above. So we are talking about projectized organization here. This is where the project manager has full authority over the project. The entire project team reports directly to the project manager. The functional manager actually has little to no authority. When we talk about functional organization, this is where the team reports to functional managers. When we talk about matrix organization, the authority is shared between both functional manager and project managers. But when we are talking about projectized organization, which is what this question is talking about, the team reports to project manager. Okay, let's move on to question number 35. How should you not respond to a positive risk or opportunity? How should you not respond to? Okay, transfer, exploit, share, enhance. Now, if you have a positive risk or if you have an opportunity in your project, are you going to really transfer this to some third party, some insurance company provider? Not at all, right? You will never transfer a positive risk or an opportunity. This is done only for negative risks or threats by shifting the impact to a third party like insurance or warranties. For positive risks or opportunities, you exploit them, which means you ensure that this opportunity materializes, or you share them. You can partner with someone to capture the benefit because maybe you yourselves do not have the capability to make sure that this opportunity can be fully materialized or can be fully utilized. So you share this opportunity with some other third party so that both of you can share the benefits. You can enhance, you increase the probability or impact of the positive risk, or you accept the positive risk. You just take advantage if it really occurs. So transfer is something which is never used for positive risks. Okay, let's talk about question number 36. You are managing an infrastructure project. You have an issue with a team member's performance. How will you communicate this issue with the team member? Formal verbal, informal verbal, formal written, informal written. What do you think, right? You have a performance issue here. As a project manager, how are you going to deal with this scenario? Well, the first thing that you should do as a project manager is to communicate informally and verbally. That's the first way to speak to a team member whose performance is not up to the mark, right? That is the best first step is to have a one-on-one private conversation. This allows for open discussion. This allows for coaching opportunities. This allows for possible resolution without any formal escalation. When it comes to formal verbal or formal written, this is not necessarily the first step, right? If the issue persists or if it requires documentation, that's when you go for this. Informal written is actually not a standard approach for performance feedback. So that's how informal verbal is your first step or your first course of action as a project manager. Here's a tip for you: you should always handle performance concerns at the lowest possible level first. So never escalate, never involve higher management, never replace team members whenever it's about performance, because you as a project manager are responsible for feedback, for coaching, for mentoring, for making sure that your team performs the best that they can. So never escalate issues like performance issues. Especially don't do that as a first step, right? This should always, escalation should always come in pretty late into the game. Okay, question number 37. You are the project manager of a website development project. There is a requirement of payment gateway integration. This is a one time activity, and you figure out that it will be easier to contract this work out rather than hire a couple of engineers for in house development. So you decide to outsource this work to a third party vendor. What tool did you use here? Bidder conference, make or buy analysis, time and materials contract, or source selection criteria. So now what have you done? If you read the question again, what you have actually done here is that you have figured out that this is a one-time activity and it will be easier to contract this work out rather than do it in-house. So what you did was a make or buy analysis. You just bought this work, right? You didn't make it in-house. So the correct answer is make or buy analysis. This analysis is used to decide whether to perform work in-house, that is whether to make, or outsource to an external vendor, which is to buy. And you made a decision to buy here. Now, obviously, in this case, payment gateway integration, it is a one-time activity, and outsourcing is more practical because you don't want to hire people, get them to do the payment gateway integration, and then they are out of work. You need to search for more work for them, right? Or fire them in the worst case. So bidder conference, option A, this happens later. It is to clarify RFPs with vendor. Time and materials contract, the option C, this is a type of contract. It is not a decision tool. Source selection criteria, which is option D, is used to evaluate vendors after the decision to outsource. So all of this can come in later. What we just did was make or buy analysis. Question number 38. You want to resolve a conflict to ensure long lasting solution. Which technique would work best? So you want a long lasting solution, not a temporary fix. Compromise, withdrawal and forcing, problem solving, or Pareto chart. Whenever you want a long lasting solution, you always go with problem solving. You should solve the problem by collaboration. So collaborating is another word for problem solving. And whenever you do that, you address the root cause of the conflict, which leads to a win-win long-term solution. Compromise, this is a quick resolution, but it is definitely not going to be long lasting because this is going to lead to a lose-lose or a win-lose sort of scenario. When it comes to withdrawal or forcing, this is something which you should avoid at all times. You can use it for short-term fixes maybe, but it is often harmful. Pareto chart is a quality tool. It is not a conflict resolution method, right? So for long lasting solution, always look for options like problem solving or collaborating. Now, this does not mean that withdrawal and forcing and compromise is something that you will never use or never do. There are situations when you may have to do that as well. You can look out for the link in the description. next to question 38 to understand the different types of conflict resolution techniques. Okay, question number 39. Decision tree analysis is a type of risk response strategy, a subset of EVM technique, a subset of EMV technique, or a quantitative risk analysis and modeling technique. So we are talking about decision tree analysis. To answer this question, you must know what decision tree analysis is. You can head over to the description. You can look at the video next to question 39 to understand more about decision tree analysis. For now, the correct answer is a quantitative risk analysis and modeling technique. So decision tree analysis is basically a quantitative risk analysis to evaluate different choices under uncertainty. It often uses the EMV or expected monetary value calculations, but it in itself is not an EMV technique, right? Uh, Risk response strategy is incorrect. Decision trees evaluate options, they don't choose a response. And then you have option B and option C. These are again incorrect. It uses EMV, like decision tree analysis. It uses EMV, but it is not a subset of EMV. EVM is something totally different, right? So decision tree is equals to quantitative risk tool, which uses probabilities and outcomes. Okay, question number 40. During the course of the project, you are informed that a key resource promised earlier has been engaged in another critical project. What should be your first step? As a project manager, if you have managed long lasting complex projects, this is something that you will face at least once in your project, right? Now, what should be your first step? Option A, negotiate with the project manager of the critical project for the resource. Option B, turn the project red or at least yellow and add this as a risk. Option C, move forward without the resource and inform the key stakeholders that some of the milestones might be missed. Option D, evaluate the impact of not having the key resource. Now, all of these are great options. All of this is something that you would do as a project manager on your real life project. But are all of these the first step? Not really. Because if you ask me, the first step is always going to be evaluating the impact of not having a key resource. You should always assess the impact of the issue on all the constraints: scope, schedule, cost, quality, right? You can then go ahead and negotiate for the resource. It definitely comes after you understand what the impact on your project really is. You can then turn project red or yellow. If you do this before the analysis, then this is obviously premature. Moving forward without the resource, that is way too risky, right? So you have to first evaluate the consequences, and if the consequences are not that big, then perhaps that is also an option that you can take. But always start with impact analysis on questions like these, on project situations like these. Analyze the situation, and based on that, come up with a response plan. If required, communicate to stakeholders beyond that. Okay, let's talk about question number 41. And it says you are a developer in a software company that is in the process of adopting Agile. So it is not Agile right now. It is in the process of adopting Agile. You have had some Agile trainings yourself and are looking forward to it. The product owner shares a brief description that describes exactly what she wants for a new feature, and your manager has assigned you to work on the feature. What should you do next? You are a developer here. You are not a Scrum Master or an Agile project manager. Start coding immediately. Remember, early delivery of the software is the key. Ignore the specification. Remember, customer collaboration is more valuable than comprehensive documentation. So look for ways to collaborate with the customer. Meet with the product owner. Remember, face-to-face conversation is the most efficient and effective method of conveying information. Or D, wait until the next sprint retrospective before asking any questions about the requirement. Now, option D is definitely wrong. You should not be waiting, especially in agile environment, right? So What should you do next? The correct answer here is option C. You should always meet the product owner because face to face conversation is the most efficient and effective method of conveying information. This is something that agile teams swear by, right? You want to have face to face communication. So that is the most logical option here. Go ahead, talk to your product owner to understand more about the requirement, right? Because they have only shared a brief description that describes exactly what she wants for a new feature. Your manager has assigned it to you. Before starting the work, get on a call with the product owner or have a face to face conversation with the product owner and share your understanding of the requirement as well. This is also important. You share what you have understood of that requirement, and then based on that, you can go ahead and start the work. So, collaboration has very high value when it comes to agile. And whenever you see questions like these, look for answers that talk about face to face conversation, that talk about collaboration, that talk about how you, as an agile team member, can proceed. Right? In fact, this is one of the agile principle also. The most efficient and effective method of conveying information is face to face conversation. This is an agile principle. So, even if the product owner gave a clear brief, which sounds like he or she did in this question, Agile also assumes that user stories are conversation starters, not full specifications. Very important point. We just, in one of our previous questions, we talked about the structure of user stories. They are structured in that way so that they start conversations, right? So these are supposed to be conversation starters, not full fledged specifications. Collaboration will always be bigger than documentation when it comes to agile values. So, meeting the product owner confirms shared understanding, acceptance criteria, and it also avoids rework. Okay, let's move on to question number 42. Which of the following is most important when it comes to change from project manager's perspective? We've answered some questions around change. So let's see if you are able to figure this out, right? So which of this is most important when it comes to change from the perspective of a project manager? Inform the sponsor about the change, record and track the progress of the change, avoid the change, or prevent uncontrolled change. Remember, in some of our previous questions around change, we talked about the importance of the change control board and the importance of following the change control process, right? The change management process. All of that is done so that you can prevent uncontrolled change. And that is the correct answer here. Preventing uncontrolled change is actually the most important critical point when it comes to the perspective of the project manager, right? This is the top priority, preventing uncontrolled change, which is also known as scope creep. So all changes must go through the change control process. When it comes to informing the sponsor or tracking changes, all of these are important, but all of these come after the change request is approved. Avoiding change, this is not even realistic. Changes may be necessary and they should be managed, they should never be avoided. So as a project manager, your main role in change management is to control, to get the approval through proper process, and then move on to implementation of the change. Okay, question number 43. You are the project manager on a team that is starting off its agile journey. The first change you introduced is moving away from a weekly team meeting to a daily stand up. Although some team members are able to attend and share valuable information, others are not too happy with this and frequently miss the meeting, citing non availability and sharing their status offline instead. What is the best thing for you to do in this situation? So, obviously, you are the project manager here. You are delusional a little bit because you are thinking that the team is starting off its agile journey. So the first change you do is introducing moving away from a weekly team meeting to a daily stand up. Daily stand up does not mean agile, to be honest. It is an important part of agile, but randomly moving away from weekly team meetings to a daily stand up Specifically when the team is new, this is not the right approach. So, option A, go back to the weekly team meeting. B, drop the daily stand up and catch up with the team members individually. Work with the team on changing their mindset or enforce everyone to join, escalate if needed. So, as I mentioned, you yourself are in the wrong here. This is not the correct way to introduce agile in your team. You shouldn't just be randomly moving from weekly team meetings to daily stand up thinking that we are now agile. What you need to do is to let your team members know the importance of daily stand up. Help them explain and understand that daily stand up is required for so and so reasons, right? So your coaching and mentoring skills come into the picture here. So the correct answer is work with the team on changing their mindset so that they don't think that daily stand up is a waste of time. Remember, agile success depends on team collaboration, it depends on transparency, it depends on commitment. Daily stand ups, they are a key practice. So, as a project manager, your role is to coach the team on why daily stand ups add value. And you should also address concerns. There could be concerns related to timing. There could be concerns related to format of your daily stand up. There could be concerns related to some sort of blockers, right? So if you go back to the weekly team meeting, which is option A, or if you drop the daily stand up itself and you are basically undermining agile principles here. When it comes to D, forcing attendance, this may cause compliance without engagement, which is totally counterproductive. So, whenever your team moves from a traditional way of delivery to agile way of delivery, the most important aspect is the mindset shift. You need to help team see values. You should not enforce anything mechanically. You can always look at the agile principles that are explained in the description below. All right, so I hope that's clear. I hope you understand the importance of agile principles and the importance of daily stand up. Randomly asking team members to shift from weekly team meetings to a daily stand up is definitely not the right approach. Okay, let's move on to question number 44. You are a product owner and recently got off a call with a business user who shared a new requirement. What should you do next? Remember, you are a product owner here. You are not a scrum master. You are not an agile project manager. The question says you are a product owner. Okay, let's see. Talk about the new requirement in the daily scrum. Schedule a sprint planning session. Add the requirement in the product backlog or add the requirement in the sprint backlog. So, as a product owner, your job is to take a look at the product backlog, manage the product backlog, right? So, that's what you are going to do here. Option C is correct. You need to add the requirement in the product backlog because remember, you are the product owner, you are responsible for the product backlog. So, all new requirements first go in the product backlog, then they are prioritized for future sprints. Daily Scrum is for the development team. It is not for introducing new requirements. When it comes to sprint planning session, this only happens at the start of a sprint. So new requirement must first be in the backlog to be discussed here. Then sprint backlog, it contains work which is already committed for the current sprint. So new requirements cannot go there mid sprint without agreement, right? So the correct answer here is add the requirement in the product backlog. Okay, question number 45. The management wants to make sure that a project is following the defined quality standards. Of the following, what would they use? Now, we are talking about the management here. So, what would the management use? Risk management plan, statement of work, work breakdown structure, or quality audit. Now, the correct answer here is quality audit because we are talking about quality standards. Now, what exactly is a quality audit? It is a structured review to check if the project activities comply with the defined quality standards, the defined quality processes, and the defined quality procedures. When we talk about risk management plan, it handles risks, It does not have anything to do with quality compliance. When we talk about statement of work, this defines deliverables and scope, not the ongoing quality checks. And then WBS basically breaks down the scope into work packages. It doesn't check compliance. So quality audits is the correct answer here. Okay, let's move on. Question number 46. You are the project manager for a software project. You have worked with the team to create the project schedule, perform critical path analysis, and calculated the values of early and late start, early and late finish, as well as float. Which activities in the project cannot slip without making the project late? So we are talking about critical path method here, right? Now, which activities? This question has a lot of extra words, extraneous details that you don't necessarily need. The question is simply asking which activities in the project cannot slip without making the project late. Activities that are on the critical path are the ones that cannot slip, because if they do, the project gets late. So this is again critical path method. If you want to know more about critical path method, how to calculate it, we have done comprehensive videos on critical path method. So definitely check out the link next to question 46 in the description below. Critical path is basically sequence of activities with zero float or zero slack. Float and slack is basically different terms for the same concept. So these are your longest pole in the tent. They cannot be delayed. Any delay in the critical path activity is going to directly delay the project completion. Now you have option A, biggest difference between ES and LF. This is incorrect because float exists here. Then you have option B, which is talking about most lag. This is about dependency delay. It is not necessarily a project delay. Then you have option D, every activity that slips delays project. This is incorrect because only critical path activities with zero slack do so. Okay, let's move on. Question number 47. As a project manager, you know you need to manage the stakeholders. Your new project is with a customer who is famous for requesting changes. Famous or infamous, I should say. Grapevine has it that the previous project manager was totally frustrated with this customer and moved to a different department. With this new project kicking off, what would you do to manage this customer? Interesting. Let me know in the comments, have you ever had such a customer? A, send the customer a copy of organization's change control process. Yeah, that's a good option. B, speak with the manager of the customer, and discuss how the previous project manager has left after getting frustrated from the requested changes. So you're trying to escalate on the customer here. C, involve the customer as early in the project as possible, being proactive. D, deny a couple of changes firmly. This doesn't sound good, right? Now, the correct option here is option C, right? You are dealing with a customer here. It is best to involve them as early in the project as possible so that they get to know a lot more details than they would if they are involved later, right? So engaging the customer early will always help in setting clear expectations, in capturing requirements properly, and also reducing the scope changes later on, right? When we talk about A, sending the customer the change control process, this is useful, but it is not enough by itself, right? It is a good first step, but it is not going to be a lot useful, right? You never know whether the customer is going to open and read it even. And you can always send it later also when the customer requests the first change. Complaining to customers managers, this is unprofessional. You are trying to escalate on the customer. This is not productive at all. Denying changes is going to create conflict, which is option D. It is definitely going to create conflict. It does not solve the root cause. So always engage with customer early. Always try to manage their expectations. If you want to know more about the power interest grid, because customer has the highest power, a video will be linked in the description below next to question 47. Okay, moving on. Question number 48. Which of the following isn't a characteristic of a project? Temporary, contains activities that are interrelated, repeats every month, has a definite beginning and end. Which of the following is not a characteristic of a project? Repeats every month is not a project. This is operations. A project is temporary. That means it has a definite start and end date. A project is unique. That means it creates a unique product, service, or result. A project can be composed of interrelated activities, but repeating every month describes operations. This is definitely not a project. So operations are ongoing, they are repetitive, while projects are temporary and unique. Okay, question number 49. Which of the following activity is not a part of the sprint review? Is not a part of the sprint review. Team creates an improvement plan based on how the sprint went. Product backlog is updated to reflect the probable scope for next sprint. The Scrum team collaborates with the business users to plan upcoming work, or the deliverable or the working software is demoed. So, what is not part of the sprint review? You need to know what sprint review really is to be able to answer this question, right? Remember that this review is focused on the product, what was done and what's next. When it comes to retrospective, that's where the focus is on the process, right? So that in itself should give away the answer. Our focus in the sprint review is the product, not the process. And option A is talking about process. It is talking about how the team should create an improvement plan based on how the sprint went and all that. This is something which you would do in sprint retrospective, not in sprint review. Sprint review includes demoing or demonstrating, whatever that you feel is the correct word. We do the demo of the completed work. We update the product backlog. We collaborate with stakeholders to plan upcoming work. All of that is done in sprint review. Option A is what is done in sprint retrospective. Okay, question number 50. Which of the following is not an engagement level in the stakeholder engagement matrix? Not an engagement level, remember. Okay, negative stakeholder, supportive stakeholder, leading stakeholder, and neutral stakeholder. Which of this is not an engagement level? Actually, negative stakeholder is not an engagement level. There could be unaware stakeholders, there could be resistant stakeholders, neutral stakeholders, supportive stakeholders, leading stakeholders, but negative stakeholder is not an engagement level, right? This is not something which is officially described. The correct term here could be resistant stakeholder, right? So that is something, if you want to know more about this stakeholder engagement matrix, definitely go ahead and check out the link in the description. Okay, with that, I would like to talk about our YouTube membership program known as VIP Pass. You get access to premium project management courses. You have collaboration opportunities with me. You can meet me for virtual consultation to discuss project management. You can just click on the join button or subscribe plus button if you're already a subscriber and get yourselves the VIP pass. And a lot of our community members are also our VIP pass holders. So definitely consider that. It comes with tremendous value. Okay, moving on. Question number 51. What is the primary objective of negotiation? Interesting. Define the exact responsibilities of each party, clarify the contract scope, get the best deal possible, find a win-win proposition for both parties. What do you think is negotiation all about? If you think the major objective of negotiation or the primary objective would be to get the best deal possible, but that is incorrect. The correct answer here is to find a win-win proposition for both parties. The negotiation, the aim of the negotiation is mutually beneficial for both the parties. That's the aim of negotiation. You have to create a win-win outcome so that all parties are committed. Nobody should feel like they got a bad deal. When it comes to defining exact responsibilities, which is option A, This is not something which is part of negotiation itself. Even option B, clarifying the contract scope, again, is not part of negotiation. It could be outcomes of the negotiation, but not the primary goal. Best deal possible, option C. This leans towards a win-lose kind of scenario, which is definitely not ideal. So negotiation is all about collaboration plus making sure you are preserving the relationship that you already have. Question number 52. One of the major outputs of the initiating process group is OPA, EEF, both A and B, project charter. The correct answer here is project charter without a doubt, because the initiating process group has the primary process of developing the project charter, which is one of the most, if not the most important document for any project out there. OPA, which is organizational process assets, and EEF, which is enterprise environmental factors. These are inputs, these are not outputs for this process group, right? So initiating output is the project charter. When we talk about planning process group, the major output there is the project management plan. So in initiating, the answer will be project charter. If the question was the major output for planning process group, the answer would be the project management plan. Okay, question number 53. Which acronym is used to describe good user stories? Inspect, invest, confirm, agile. The correct answer is invest, because it stands for independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable. So invest is a quick checklist to ensure a story is ready for development. Question 54. If you are highly knowledgeable in a certain technical area, what kind of power do you have? If you are highly knowledgeable in a certain technical area, do you have expert power, storming, self actualization, or a referent? The correct answer is expert power, because you are an expert in some technical area, right? So expert power comes from deep knowledge, skills, or experience in a specific domain. Storming, this is a team development stage. This is not a type of power. Self actualization is from Maslow's hierarchy. This is also not a type of power. Referent power comes from charisma, comes from respect, comes from relationships. This is not a technical expertise. So, this is a kind of power, but it is not being highly knowledgeable in a certain technical area, right? So there are different types of power in project management. Definitely look at the video next to question 54 in the description below. Okay, question 55. You are the Scrum Master and are responsible for everything except, which means what is it that the Scrum Master is not responsible for? Helping the team understand the customer requirements, helping the team understand the agenda of the daily Scrum, guiding the product owner on how to effectively manage the product backlog, or D, guiding the entire organization on the understanding of Scrum. What do you think is not your responsibility? The answer might be surprising, because you might have to read this twice to look at and find out the nuance. But the correct answer here is option A. It is not your job as a Scrum Master to make sure that the team understands the customer requirements. And this is the difference between a Scrum Master and a project manager. When we are talking about project manager, it might fall into the responsibility of the project manager to ensure that the Scrum team, or not just the Scrum team, but the project team understands the requirement. But option A is not a part of the Scrum Master's role. This is something which is owned by the product owner, not the Scrum Master. Product owner owns the product backlog, and product owner is responsible for communicating and clarifying customer requirements. The role of the Scrum Master is to facilitate the Scrum process. It is to coach team members, coach the entire organization, the larger teams. It is to remove impediments. It is ensuring Scrum is understood and followed, right? So the key responsibilities of Scrum Masters are to, facilitate the Scrum events. It could be daily Scrum, sprint planning, sprint review, sprint retrospective. It could be to guide the product owner on backlog management, right? What are the tools and techniques that can be used to manage the backlog. And it is also a responsibility of the Scrum Master to make sure that the organization adopts the Scrum way of delivery. It is also the Scrum Master's responsibility to remove impediments. It is also Scrum Master's responsibility to promote self organization and cross functionality within the team. But the product owner is the owner of requirements. The Scrum Master owns the process, the Scrum process, and the team owns the delivery, right? So I hope I was able to explain this difference in the roles of product owner, Scrum Master, and the Scrum team. Okay, question number 56. Which of the following process groups apply to all projects? Planning, monitoring and controlling, closing, initiating, planning, closing, initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing, planning, executing, and closing. This is as straightforward a question as it gets, because all process groups are applicable to all projects across the board. No two questions about it. All five process groups apply to every single project, regardless of the size of the project, regardless of the industry. When we talk about initiating, we are formally starting the project. We make documents like the project charter. When we are planning, we are defining scope, schedule, cost, quality, risk, and other such things. When we are executing, we are performing the actual work. In monitoring and controlling, we are tracking progress, we are managing changes, and closing is where we formally close the project or the phase of the project. Okay, question 57. When decomposing the work in the work breakdown structure, which of the following is not true? Decompose until the WBS element cannot be logically decomposed further. Decompose until the WBS element can be estimated accurately. Remember, we are talking about not true here. Okay. Decompose until the WBS element can be accomplished by a single project team member. Decompose until the WBS element has a meaningful conclusion. So the correct option here is option C, because it is not necessary that you decompose until this element can be performed by a single project team member, right? The project work is not to be done by single project team members. It is to be done with different teams, cross-functional teams, different team members of the same team. So the decomposition of a WBS is done until the work packages are clearly defined, until they are measurable, they are estimable, they are manageable and assignable. It is not required that each work package be performed by only one person. It can be performed by multiple team members. It can be performed by multiple team members of different teams, right? So all of them can work on the same work package. Now, the decomposition of WBS, it stops when deliverables are clearly defined, not when assigned to individuals, right? So assigning to individuals is not part of the decomposition process. Okay, question number 58. You are dealing with a cost plus incentive fee, CPIF contract. The estimated cost of this contract is 150K USD with a predetermined fee of 30K. The share ratio of buyer to seller is 70/30. Once the project is complete, the actual cost of the project comes out to be 120K. How much savings did the seller make? Also, how much did he make as incentive? So, how do you calculate all of this? The first thing is you look at the target cost and the actual cost. The target cost here is 150K. The actual cost here is 120K, right? So there you have it. You have a savings of 30K right there, right? So it was a cost plus incentive fee contract. the estimated cost was 150, the actual cost was 120. So you right out of the gate have a savings of 30K. Now you have to calculate the incentive fee. So the ratio was 70/30, right? So that means the seller's share of savings is 30% of 30K, which is 9,000 US dollars. So the correct answer is 9,000 US dollars. But remember, we are now talking about total seller profit, right? This is what the question asks. How much savings did the seller make? Also, how much did he make as incentive? So you have a predetermined fee of 30K, and then you have the incentive of 9K, which we just calculated, right? So the total fee comes out to be 39,000 US dollars. If you haven't understood, go back, watch this whole explanation again. If you are still struggling, check out the link in the description next to question number 58. Okay, so 55K, 30K, 32K, 27K, 30K, 9K, or 15K and 3K. The correct option is option C, which is what we calculated, right? So that's the correct option. CPIF, cost plus incentive fee, is a type of contract. As I mentioned, definitely check out the link in the description if you want to know the different types of contracts, if you want to go over some more practice questions. Okay, question number 59. All the questions below are part of the daily scrum except. So there are some questions that are part of the daily scrum, and they will be listed as options, but one of them might not be or will not be a part or a question that will be part of the daily scrum. What have I done since the last daily scrum? What planned work did I fail to complete? What are the roadblocks I'm facing? What will I do till the next daily scrum to meet the sprint goal? The correct option is option B. What planned work did I fail to complete? This is incorrect for daily scrum. Daily scrum is a forward looking and focused on progress toward the sprint goal. So it is a forward looking meeting. Its focus is on the progress towards the sprint goal. It is not meant to be a status report. A lot of project managers make this mistake of thinking that daily scrum is just like your weekly team meeting. It's just that this is done daily. It is not like that. Daily Scrum, as I mentioned, is a forward looking meeting. It is focused on progress toward the sprint goal. It is not focused on what was something that a team member might have failed to accomplish, which should be part of the status report, and it should be handled in retrospectives or maybe some other discussions, but definitely not in the daily scrum. There are three classic questions in the daily scrum that are asked and teams are required to answer. That is, what did I do yesterday that helped the team meet the sprint goal, of course? What will I do today to help the team meet the sprint goal again? And are there any impediments that are preventing me or the team from meeting the sprint goal? And as you can see, these three options talk about that, but option B is definitely incorrect. Okay, last question for this session. Question number 60. You are the scrum master of a team that has started measuring the velocity. In the first three sprints, the velocity was measured. The team recorded the following numbers: 31, 47, and 25. Based on these numbers, what is your conclusion about the team? Team has not been able to correctly measure the velocity. The velocity is evening out over multiple sprints. That doesn't look like correct. Team has become drastically less productive from sprint 2 to sprint 3. Corrective actions are required. Team is still determining the story point scale. The correct answer here is option D, because as you can see, the velocity, the numbers are all over the place. So that means the team is still determining the story point scale. Team is basically calibrating story points, and that's what they do in the first few sprints. Work estimation consistency is still developing. Option A is incorrect because measurement is fine. Fluctuation is normal early on. Option B is incorrect because velocities 31, 47, 25 are not yet evening out at all. And option C is incorrect because there is lower velocity in sprint 3. It doesn't necessarily mean productivity drop. It could be due to estimation or scope changes, right? So it could be estimation error, which is what seems to be the case here. Stable velocity is usually going to emerge only after 3 to 5 sprints when the estimation scale stabilizes and the agile team knows how story points are actually calculated and what is the actual velocity or realistic velocity that they can aim for. So that's all that we had in this massive 60 questions session. I hope you got a lot of value out of it. If you have any questions, definitely drop them in the comments. 60 important links in the description. Definitely check them out. Share this video with others who might be able to benefit and practice for their PMP exam. Keep learning, check out our other videos, and my call to action would be to subscribe to this channel so that it helps us stay motivated and create more free content for you. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.